The sad dog in pen number 7. The clatter of happy paws and children's laughter echoed through the long, concrete corridor, a sound Ranger had come to associate with disappointment. He watched, head low, as another family paused at the kennel across from his. A young girl, no older than 7, pressed her face against the wire, giggling as a fluffy terrier mix licked her fingers. Ranger sighed, a soft, almost imperceptible sound, and retreated further into the shadow of his cot. 2 years. 2 years of watching them come and go, their bright hopes never settling on pen number 7. A moment later, Sarah, the afternoon attendant, approached his kennel. She was holding a clipboard, her brow furrowed in concentration as she checked off a task. "All right, Ranger, let's get you fed," she murmured, her voice gentle. As she leaned to unlatch the bowl from the feeder, the clipboard slipped from her grasp. Her hand shot up instinctively to catch it. Ranger didn't even see the clipboard fall. All he saw was the sudden, swift movement of her arm, high above her head. A whimper tore from his throat. He recoiled violently, scrambling backward, his body hitting the far wall of the kennel with a thud. His tail tucked so tightly between his legs it practically disappeared. He pressed himself against the cold concrete, eyes wide with a terror that hadn't dulled with time. Sarah's face fell. "Oh, Ranger, I'm so sorry, boy," she whispered, her hand now held carefully at her side. She knelt slowly, talking to him in soothing tones, but he remained frozen, trembling. Later that evening, the shelter's digital log was updated. Ranger German Shepherd, EST 4 years old, 2 years in residence. Continued extreme aversion to raised hands/fast movements. Not suitable for families with young children. The note, stark and definitive, seemed to seal his fate once more. A special visitor. The bell above the shelter door chimed softly, a welcoming sound that pulled Ms. Lily from her paperwork. A man stood just inside, his frame radiating a quiet dignity. He wore a simple olive-green jacket, and his left hand rested naturally at his side, while his right arm ended in a sophisticated, articulated prosthetic. "Good morning," Ms. Lily offered, her smile warm. "How can I help you?" "Good morning," he replied, his voice calm and even. "My name is Arthur Miller. I'm here about adopting a service dog." He gestured subtly to his prosthetic. "Lost this arm a few years back, in the service. Been managing fine, but I'm looking for a companion who can also assist with a few daily tasks." Ms. Lily nodded, her gaze taking in his patient demeanor. "Of course, Mr. Miller. We have a few dogs in our program. Let me check our records." She pulled up a tablet, scrolling through profiles. Most were eager, tail-wagging retrievers or gentle labs. Then she paused, her finger hovering over a particular entry. "There's Ranger," she mused, more to herself than to him. "He's a German Shepherd, quite intelligent, but he has some unique sensitivities. We've had to mark him not for families with children due to how he reacts to fast movements, especially hands raised above his head." She met his eyes, a flicker of hesitation in hers. "He tends to cower, even bolt." Mr. Miller listened, his expression unreadable. "I understand," he said, his voice thoughtful. "May I meet him?" A warning about Ranger. "Ranger is a remarkable dog in many ways," Ms. Lily began, her voice softening as she watched the shepherd from across the training yard. He sat perfectly still, head slightly bowed, his gaze fixed on a distant point. He's intelligent, eager to please, and already knows a host of commands. But he has one very specific issue. She paused, then continued. Any sudden movement, especially a hand raised above the shoulder, he simply can't handle it. He'll flinch, cower, sometimes even bolt. Mr. Miller leaned against the chain-link fence, his good hand resting on the cool metal. Ranger's coat, a rich blend of sable and black, shimmered in the afternoon sun. From this distance, the dog's posture spoke volumes of a quiet sadness, his eyes holding a depth of sorrow that tugged at Mr. Miller's own heart. He imagined the years of fear Ranger must have endured, etched into those dark, intelligent eyes. It's why we've had him for 2 years, Ms. Lily explained, a note of resignation in her tone. And why, despite his many strengths, we've had to make the difficult decision that he simply isn't suitable for families with young children. Their unpredictable movements, their quick gestures. It's just too much for him. We've learned that the hard way. Mr. Miller nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on Ranger, a thoughtful silence settling between them. The slow hand. Ms. Lily led Ranger into the small meeting room, her hand resting lightly on his collar. Mr. Miller, I must reiterate, Ranger has a severe aversion to quick movements, especially hands. Ranger's ears twitched, scanning the unfamiliar space. Mr. Miller sat across a polished oak table, his gaze steady. He was a man of quiet intensity, his left hand resting on the table, while his right arm, ending in a dark, articulated prosthetic, lay inert beside it. Ranger eyed the metallic limb with a flicker of curiosity, then dismissed it, focusing instead on Mr. Miller's face. Mr. Miller nodded to Ms. Lily, then slowly, deliberately, began to raise his prosthetic arm. It moved with a soft, almost imperceptible whir, a slow, mechanical ascent that lacked the fluid, unpredictable speed of a human limb. Ranger's body tensed, a low growl rumbling in his chest. His eyes fixed on the approaching appendage, waiting for the sudden jerk, the familiar arc of impact. But it never came. The prosthetic continued its measured, unhurried trajectory, stopping inches from Ranger's muzzle. He braced, muscles coiled, but the hand simply hung there, motionless. There was no threat in its metallic stillness, no history of pain in its deliberate, unhurried approach. Ranger's tail gave a tentative, almost imperceptible wag, a different kind of touch. The rubberized fingers of Mr. Miller's prosthetic arm slowly extended, holding a worn, red squeaky ball. Ranger, who had been watching his every movement with intense scrutiny, tilted his head. The mechanical whirring was a low hum, a stark contrast to the sharp, unpredictable sounds Ranger had grown to associate with human interaction. Instead of recoiling, the German shepherd's ears swiveled forward, tracking the ball as it was gently presented. Mr. Miller kept his real hand still, tucked subtly behind his back. He was learning to communicate entirely through the deliberate, unthreatening motions of his artificial limb. He nudged the ball a fraction closer, the prosthetic's elbow bending with a soft click. Ranger's nose twitched, a tentative sniff, then a quick lick at the ball. He still wouldn't take it, but there was no fear, only a profound, almost academic curiosity. The tension in Ranger's shoulders had eased, the rigid posture replaced by a looser, more watchful stance. A faint smile touched Mr. Miller's lips. He retracted the prosthetic slightly, then offered it again. This wasn't just about a toy. It was about a new language, a bridge built from silent, consistent gestures. Ranger's gaze remained fixed on the arm, not the man. It was a different kind of touch, slow and predictable, an alien hand that offered only peace. Mr. Miller knew this was just the beginning, but in Ranger's unwavering stare, he saw a glimmer of trust taking root. The real fear. Ms. Lily watched, her breath held, as Ranger nudged his wet nose against Mr. Miller's prosthetic arm. The metallic sheen didn't deter him. In fact, he leaned into it, a soft whimper vibrating in his chest, almost a purr. Mr. Miller's fingers, though immobile, rested gently on Ranger's shoulder, a silent testament to their burgeoning connection. It was then, seeing Ranger's utter relaxation, his tail giving a tentative, slow wag, that a sudden, sharp clarity pierced Ms. Lily's mind. It wasn't the hands. It had never been the hands themselves. It was the speed, the lightning-fast arc, the sudden descent, the abruptness that preceded pain. Ranger's fear wasn't of a hand poised above him, but of the violent velocity it represented. The prosthetic, with its deliberate, measured movements, couldn't replicate that predatory swiftness. It lacked the organic snap of a human wrist, the uncontrolled lurch of anger. A wave of sorrow washed over Ms. Lily as she considered the years Ranger had lived in fear, his world defined by an invisible threat that now seemed so starkly understood. Every flinch, Every cower was a memory of trauma, not of a hand, but of a strike. The real fear wasn't the presence of a limb, but the terrifying anticipation of its acceleration. A new home. The decision solidified in Mr. Miller's mind with an undeniable clarity. "I'm taking him," he stated, his voice firm, echoing slightly in the sterile kennel. Ms. Lilly, who had been observing their interaction with a hopeful smile, nodded. "That's wonderful news, Mr. Miller. He's ready for a home like yours." Ranger, sensing a shift, nudged Mr. Miller's knee. Mr. Miller slowly extended his prosthetic, and this time, Ranger didn't just lean. He licked the cool metal, a rough, warm gesture that surprised them both. It wasn't a tentative flick but a thorough, almost grateful lapping. A low whine, more relief than distress, rumbled in Ranger's chest. For the first time, Mr. Miller felt the full weight of Ranger's past, and the silent plea that accompanied it. An unspoken fear of misunderstanding, of being misjudged again. The paperwork was a blur of signatures and clipped instructions. Soon, the heavy metal door of the shelter hissed shut behind them. The afternoon sun, filtered through the oak trees, cast long shadows as Mr. Miller opened the passenger door of his truck. Ranger hesitated for only a moment, then, with a soft thud, jumped into the seat, settling beside him. The journey had just begun. Mr. Miller reached over, his prosthetic arm slowly, deliberately, resting on Ranger's head. Ranger leaned into the contact, his eyes, previously guarded, now soft and watchful, reflecting the promise of a new life. Training with trust. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Mr. Miller's living room as he prepared for their first training session. Ranger sat attentively, his ears perked, a faint tremor still running through his muscular frame. Mr. Miller knelt, his prosthetic arm resting on his thigh. He slowly extended the artificial limb, palm flat, towards Ranger. The dog eyed it cautiously, a low whine escaping him, but he didn't flinch or retreat. "Stay," Mr. Miller murmured, his voice soft but firm. He moved the prosthetic in a gentle arc, a deliberate, unhurried motion. Ranger's gaze tracked the arm, his head tilting. Mr. Miller then lowered the arm, palm down, towards the floor. Ranger, after a moment of hesitation, slowly lowered himself into a perfect down position. A small bark of relief, almost a sigh, escaped him. A warm current of understanding flowed between them. Mr. Miller tried another signal. He tapped the prosthetic's fingers against his chest. Ranger, after a moment of contemplation, nudged his head against Mr. Miller's knee, a soft whimper of inquiry. "Good boy," Mr. Miller praised, his heart swelling. He realized the slow, mechanical movements were not just non-threatening. They were a unique language. The lack of organic speed, the deliberate articulation, was a canvas for new commands. He raised the prosthetic, fingers splayed, and Ranger, without being told, lifted a paw in response, a nascent wave of trust washing over the room. Best friends forever. The familiar click and whir of Mr. Miller's prosthetic arm signaled the beginning of their afternoon session. Ranger sat, eyes fixed, the slight tension in his shoulders his only tell. "Retrieve," Mr. Miller commanded, his bionic fingers pointing to a dropped set of keys near the couch. Ranger padded forward, a picture of focused grace. He nudged the keys with his nose, then gently scooped them into his mouth, his gaze never leaving the mechanical arm that had become his compass. With a soft thump, he deposited them into Mr. Miller's outstretched, unthreatening palm. "Good boy," Mr. Miller murmured, and the dog leaned into the scratch behind his ears, a low rumble of contentment vibrating through his chest. Later, curled on the rug by Mr. Miller's feet, Ranger sighed, a deep, contented sound. The rhythm of Mr. Miller's breathing was a lullaby, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating the quiet understanding that flowed between them. Ranger had found more than just a home. He'd found a sanctuary. Here, there were no sudden movements, no sharp words, only the steady, deliberate language of a hand that knew only how to guide, never to strike. He was safe, truly safe, for the first time in his life, and Mr. Miller, in turn, found a silent partner whose unwavering trust filled a void he hadn't realized was there. Their bond, forged in unique circumstances, was now an unbreakable thread, woven with patience and boundless affection.